Okay, we're interviewing Annette Smedley today. She's running for 14th Circuit Court Judge. Annette, tell us a little bit about your background, yourself, and why you chose to get into the race.
My personal background or my professional background?
Both.
My personal background, I've been married for 32 years. My husband is a Navy vet. I've lived here all my life. My father was in the Navy, World War II. My grandfather was in World War I. I had a brother that was in the Marines, one that was in the Army, one that was in the Navy, and then a nephew in the Air Force, so we kind of covered the branches. My mom and dad owned a restaurant. I started there when I was 12 years old, and I started up as a waitress, as a dishwasher, and then worked my way up from there. My husband was stationed in Virginia, so I went there, worked as a cook, got my accounting degree, and then we moved back here because my father was sick and his father was sick, so we moved back here. I started back at the restaurant working, went to school, got my associate's degree at MCC. I got my bachelor's degree at Grand Valley, and then I went to Thomas Cooley for law school. I have been working as an attorney for over 10 years. I've worked on thousands of cases. I was doing public defender stuff. I started out prosecuting. Prior to getting my license, I was a prosecutor. And then once I got my license, I became a defense attorney. I've been retained. I also been a public defender, and I've helped the public defender here in Muskegon County. So I was pretty much every day in court, either in district court or circuit court. I am now the only felony public defender in Mason County. I also still do retained work here. And I probably have had over 15 actual circuit court trials, from murder, rape, child abuse cases, kidnapping. So I'm experienced in jury trials. I've also had probably thousands of cases, just cases that plead or cases that have bench trials. I've also have done family law, divorce, termination of parental rights, custody cases, civil cases, property, juvenile. So I have, for a circuit court, you need all of those because you don't know what you're going to be handling. Judge Gray's position is what is open, and he is mainly criminal, but he also has civil. And if for some reason or another judge bumps, then you might have family law or PPOs or something. So I've covered it all, and I've had experience in all of it. And being the public defender kind of gives me a better opportunity because I wasn't allowed to pick my cases. As a public defender, you get what comes along. Whoever cannot afford an attorney, you have to represent them and make sure that their constitutional rights are protected. So I believe that gives me kind of a broader experience because I didn't get to sit back and pick and choose and say, well, I don't want to do that case or I don't want to do that case. Whatever comes to me, that's what I have to handle. So I believe, that's pretty much my experience. I've got 6 kids.
So you've got quite a bit of background as a public defender, and you've seen the inside, outside of criminal law. But circuit court judges also handle quite a bit of civil law. What's your experience with that?
I've had civil cases I've done where people have sued other people, and I've taken care of that. I've done the tort law with accidents, and I don't do med mal. It's a really specific field to get into is medical malpractice. That is something that judges don't have experience in everything. So with me, I have a little bit of everything and a lot of some. But if something comes in front of me that I have questions on, there's always something that you can check on. And with the experience that I have most of the experience that I need. And if there's something that comes up that I haven't come across, it's easy to get the information on. So I have done several civil cases. Like I said, suing because they didn't get their car back, suing because they slipped and fell. There's the civil cases are basically that, and
Right.
The landlord-tenant
Right.
kind of stuff. I've done that, so I've got the experience in civil law.
We have a situation where essentially what I've done mentally, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is I've taken criminal cases, I've divided them into 3 categories: a violent felony with a victim, a nonviolent felony with a victim, and a nonviolent felony without a victim. Now, as you know, that we have a jail overcrowding problem, and we also have a problem in Michigan's prisons because they're pretty well packed too. I think everybody would agree that if there's a violent felony that's been committed, then the person should go to prison. If there's been a nonviolent felony that's been committed with a victim, then it's questionable, depends on the circumstances. But what about if you have a nonviolent felony, there's no victim? Is it really necessary to incarcerate that person, or can there be some other type of remedial action taken?
It's not always necessary to incarcerate. I don't believe that has to be the be-all. In the situation, there is other alternatives. We have youthful trainee programs. We have programs, the work programs. We can have community service. There's a lot of things that we can do in the alternative than to send people to prison. The KPAP program, that's an alternative. It all depends on the actual crime itself, and it also depends on the individual. How many times has he been here? How many times has he committed this same exact crime? If he's committed this crime 50 times and he didn't learn in that 50 times, maybe it's because he didn't have the incarceration and we need to give him something. Maybe if it's his first time or a second time, there is an alternative to put there that you can go, look, if you continue on the path, you're going to end up in jail or in prison. So there is alternatives, and I believe we should use those in those situations.
Public defender system in Muskegon County, is it broken?
It's not completely broken.
Not completely, okay.
It's not completely broken. It needs a lot of help. The system that we have, it's gotten a little bit better, because when I first started, the public defender, there was one firm that had it all. And what that firm did was hire out independent contractors. And that independent contractor, we had 2 independent contractors for each one of the other judges. And then they would have to hire their own public defender for district court. So then you only had 2 public defenders in district court. They were overwhelmed. They were running from court to court, and they had all 4 judges. It wasn't they were assigned to a specific judge. They have changed that. Now we have a public defender for each judge in circuit court, and we also have a public defender for each judge in district court. So it's gotten better, but the problem that you have is there's still a case overload, and you don't have the same funds that the state has for the prosecution. The defense isn't getting those kind of funds. So when I want to do investigations, I have to use my own money to do that. Unless you petition the court, ask for money, they say, okay, we'll allow this much. Well, the investigator's charging twice as much, so now you have to pay out of your pocket to actually get that investigator. So are they getting the representation that they need? I think they could get better. And it's not the attorneys that we have a problem with. It's the amount of money that's coming into the system that's unfair between prosecution and defense.
You're aware of a lawsuit that's pending in Ingham County Circuit Court against Muskegon County, Genesee County, and Calhoun County, basically saying the public defender system here is constitutionally inadequate.
Yes.
What's your opinion on that?
Well, they had, I can't remember his name. I had one of the people that they
Christopher
picked.
Manny's.
Yes. I had him and represented him at trial.
Okay.
He's one that was included in this lawsuit. I think they could have picked a better person to be represented in their lawsuit, because Mr. Manny's, I did a lot of investigating on that case. We actually held the trial on that case, and I had, some of the charges were found not guilty at trial. He was found guilty of the home invasion, but he was found guilty of some of the charges in that case. It was a case that I did a lot of investigating on. I don't believe that case was a good case for them to include in their lawsuit. Are there some that possibly could have qualified? Yeah, there is.
Do you think that a lot of the defense success comes down to the fact that if the defendant is not guilty and the public defender has adequate resources, depending on what those resources may be for the particular case, that's going to be outcome determinative? In other words, if there's enough money there, so if we need to do what we need to do, then this person's going to get a fair shake. But if it's something that's a complex matter, like you indicated earlier, and you don't have the money for an investigator, then you don't have parity with the prosecution.
I think that would come into like the felony courts versus
Right.
the misdemeanor courts.
Right.
The misdemeanor courts, I think there's adequate attorneys, there's adequate funds and stuff to take care of probably 99% of the stuff that comes before a district court. You might have some really in-depth investigation on something, but it's very, very rare in district court. So in circuit court, when there is that case that needs all of the special stuff, we petition the courts. And would the amount of money make a difference? I don't know if it makes a difference in what you're saying. And if the guy is innocent and you don't have these funds, is there going to be a different outcome if we have more money? I don't think that's going to matter, whether he's innocent or guilty. I don't think the amount of money would rely on that. If he's innocent, I think there's possibly him not getting a fair shake with all the money in the world. Even if he's guilty or innocent, it wouldn't matter how much money is out there. What happens is you do the investigation, you bring it forward, and a jury makes that decision. So I don't believe that it rests just on money.
Tell us about your family court experience. Have you handled divorce cases in the past?
I've handled divorce cases. I've had several divorce cases. I've also had parental termination trials, which I really do not like parental termination trials, but I've had several of those. I've also dealt in child custody cases and child support cases. So my family court experience is extensive also, because I've had a lot of those cases.
What makes you different than the other 5 candidates?
What makes me different from the other 5 candidates is I am across the board with experience. I have experience in juvenile, I have experience in criminal, prosecution and defense. I have experience in family law, in civil law, in probate law, in contract law. I've done contracts for entertainment systems. So I'm across the board, have all the experience. But what makes me really stand out is mainly half of Judge Graves' caseload is criminal. And because I have the opportunity of being a prosecutor and a defense attorney, and not just a defense attorney, a public defender who does not have chances to say, no, I don't want your case, I have more of the experience that I need to be in that position. I've had more trials than many attorneys that have been in practice for over 30 years because of the position I am with public defender. So with all those experiences and all those trials that I have had, and I have covered every base that I would need to whatever case came in front of me, I have experience on. I believe that makes me the candidate above the rest.
Okay. Some of the questions I have is, what % of inmates do you think should be in the jail waiting trial? I'll start out with, okay, right now we have about 65 to 70% of people in jail are awaiting trial.
All right.
I have been told that generally it should be 50 or 35%. I was wondering your opinion on that.
My opinion on that is, without knowing the reason why that, sometimes it will vary. Sometimes it's going to be 45%, sometimes it's going to be 65. The reasons why they're there waiting trial. Is it because they can't make bond? Is it because of the severity of the crime? Is it because because they have never, because they haven't appeared in court before, because some of them have a record of not appearing and failing to, showing up for any of their court dates. So then they put a higher bond on them. So is it a probation violation and they're waiting for that?
All I know is the average for the county.
And so it's such a number, and there's so many variables there that I couldn't say one thing or another would help. I would look at it and go, okay, on my caseload, I have this many people waiting for trial in my court. Look at them and go, okay, why are they there? How can I get them out to relieve the jail? And is it safe for the community to allow them out? And is there alternatives to allow them out, such as a tether unit or something, so that we can still keep an eye on them but alleviate the jail? So it's kind of hard to answer that directly without knowing why and how they're there.
And you actually brought up the question of the tethers or the SCRAMS on having them out before trial without being in the jail.
Doesn't this speak also to the fact that the judge sets bond? I realize that in most cases the district court judge sets bond, but if it's an extraordinarily high bond, that can be appealed to the circuit court, and the circuit court judge can say, hey, wait a minute, this person's in here for, say, possession of marijuana. I think the bond can be a lot less than that.
That's correct. District court sets it. And usually circuit court does not review it unless an attorney makes a bond motion.
Right.
So usually you don't see anything about bond unless there's a motion made, or unless they come in front of you for a probation violation. Judges in circuit court actually set bonds for their probation violation people. So if I had somebody come in front of me that was there because of a probation violation, it would be my job to set that bond. And then what I would have to look at is, what was the violation? Why are they there? I mean, is the violation because they committed another assault? Is it because they didn't show up for one of their hearings with the probation officer? That wouldn't require them to have to sit in jail and use up a bed because they didn't show up one day.
What's your philosophy on jail? Is it something that should be punitive, or something that should be rehabilitation? Look at it that way. What's the idea? If you're going to send somebody to jail, if you're going to send somebody to prison, why are you doing it? What's the philosophical motivation behind it?
The reason to send them there is for the punishment. It's not, I don't care what anybody says, this society wants to believe that we're sending them away because we want to rehabilitate them. If they're getting sent to prison or they're getting sent to jail, it's a punishment. There's no other way to look at it. It is a punishment. It's a punishment for something that you did. Is there rehabilitation programs in the prisons and in the jail? Very few. Does it really help, and is it rehabilitating them by sending them there? No. That's just my opinion. I don't believe, if you want the rehabilitation along with the punishment, you order those programs, because those programs, most of the time, you're not going to get them in prison and jail.
Do we need a new jail?
The jail is awful. I can tell you that. It's overcrowded. It's my opinion on what they should have done to begin with was basically for the amount of money that they put into the new courthouse, they could have built a new courthouse and a jail. Does it need to be remodeled, and does it need some fixing up? Yes. Are we going to get that at this time with the economy the way it is and asking people to give us more money to be able to build a jail? I don't think so. But in reality, it's not for the comfort. I mean, a lot of people go, well, they don't need to be comforted. We don't need a new jail. That's not it. It's, you know, the walls are bad. The plumbing's, I mean, it's just bad. So does it need to be remodeled? Absolutely. But is it going to? It's probably not reality.
Now, you're aware that the county has a history of court trials with the jail. At one point, Judge Kalenda from Kent County had to go ahead and order some things happen to this jail because the sheriff at the time, Harry Pennington, sued the County Board of Commissioners. This was probably about 10 to 15 years ago. As a result of that case, they took the jail and expanded it into the basement of the county building, and it went from approximately 250 inmates to 400 inmates. Since that's a pretty healthy increase, is that enough jail space, 400 beds? That sound about right to you? Or do we need more than that? Or is that too much?
Well, we're overcrowded, and the reason why we're overcrowded is a lot of the people that are there we could use alternatives for who is there. I mean, there is possession marijuana. We can use an alternative for that. It's a non-violent offender. He's got the marijuana, she got the marijuana. I mean, it's them. They're harming themselves. Could we use alternatives and throw them in jail? Yes. Retail frauds. They're stealing from stores, which affects all of us because then the stores have to raise their prices and stuff. But is there alternatives to that? Yes. There is tethers. There is programs out there that we could use for the non-violent offenders, so we could relieve that. If we did have a new jail and they built it, we could use it like a lot of the other jails do. I know that some of the jails rent their spaces out, and they get a lot of money for that comes into their county, which they can use for alternative programs or they can use for their community. And I think that's a good idea also because we're using our resources to make money for our city, which needs.
Isn't it axiomatic, though, that if you have a jail, regardless of whether it's 400 beds, 500 beds, 600 beds, the judges, the police, and the prosecutors have pressure on them to fill it up because if they don't, they look soft on crime?
No, I don't believe that.
So we could have a jail with 500 beds and have an average occupancy of 425, and you'd be okay with that?
I'd be okay with that because the extra beds that we have, we can get money from somebody else that needs their inmate to be housed for the week, or that needs their inmates housed for a month because they don't have time to come get them. You know how much money and income that we could have in Muskegon County that could be used for all kinds of programs?
But you're looking at the jail then as a business.
Yeah.
Where does the money come from? Who goes ahead and how do we get inmates from other counties or from the feds?
The other counties, if they know you have that room and that space, they're the ones knocking on your door. They're asking you. We know you have space in your jails. Can we use this? If we're not building a huge monstrosity of a building that is going to take up all the money, and we do have some space there, we don't have to fill it. It's not required that, we're going to have to send everybody to jail. But we do have enough bed space that we can say, hey, look, there's some money that can come in. I mean, if you have it, you might as well get the benefit for the county.
Now you keep answering all my questions before I ask them.
I'm sorry.
That's fine, that's fine. I want you to understand, I have questions, you just happen to be answering them before I get to ask them, so it's like, why repeat the question again, so.
There's 4 circuit judges, and the way I understand it is that if I file a civil case, I have a 40% chance of getting Judge Graves, a 40% chance of getting Judge Hicks, a 20% chance of getting Judge Marietti, and almost a 0% chance of getting Judge Ruck because he handles family court matters.
Correct.
So What's your philosophy on that? It used to be where you had, we've had 4 circuit judges since the late 60s, and when I went up to file a case for any reason, I had an equal chance of getting any of them on a civil matter, any of them on a criminal matter. Should that be changed, or is that a good way to do it?
I think that's a good way to do it, because there's Judge Marietti has part-time family, part-time criminal. So he's taken some of the family court's docket. Judge Hicks and Judge Graves does not have the family court. So what they're doing is just civil and criminal. And then you have just basically a family, and then you have a family and criminal. So, and civil with Judge Marietti. And I think that's a good balance across the board. Now, what you can get with this is one of the judges, let's say that Judge Hicks decides that he's tired of doing just criminal and civil, and he wants to do some family law. He can bump another judge if he's got the seniority and say, look, I want to do this docket instead of this docket. So it could switch around. It would be up to the judges, but it could switch around. I think that the system that they have right now and how they have it separated is a good system.
There's other counties that have what's called a drug judge and a drug court, and from what I understand, that's worked pretty successful in those counties. Should we have that here too?
I think the drug court is, I've talked to the people in Grand Haven that has the drug court. The drug court is very successful. It's a good program. The problem is it takes a little while to get it here because you have so many people that are involved. You have grants that are involved. Most of the people that successfully complete the program stay out crime-free. It is successful. Do I think it's a good program? Absolutely. Would I support it? Yes. If asked to be part of it, I would be happy to be part of it. One person can't do it all.
When I was on the sheriff's website the other day, just at random, I found that there were 40 people incarcerated for drug offenses, 17 drunk drivers, 7 people that haven't paid child support, 6 people that failed to register as a sex offender, and there were 5 people driving with license suspended and 2 people in there for open receptacle. Now, out of that category, out of those numbers and the categories I just described to you, do all those people really need to be in jail? And I keep in mind that it's not that the circuit court doesn't sentence people to jail for open receptacle, and nor does it for suspended license, nor does it for drunk driving unless it's felony drunk driving. But do all those people really need to be there? Is there something wrong with that?
I don't understand why the driving while license suspendeds are there. Most of the time they get a bond and they're out. Now, if some of them have 15 driving while license suspended, a lot of times the judges are going, I'm done. You're not learning. You keep getting behind the wheel and you're not learning, so they keep them there. But some of those could be alleviated probably. I don't know the facts in the cases. The open receptacles, there's no reason. If that's the only charge, I would never think that an open receptacle would have to use up a bed space. Drunk driving is a danger. It's danger on our street and to everybody that's there. But do they all need to be behind bars? No. We have ignition locks that you have to blow in to be able to get into a car. We have the alcohol tethers. Now, are they 100%? No, nothing is. But if we could use the bed space for a more violent criminal, I think that we could alleviate it there.
Well, that comes down to the fact that we could get rid of the overcrowding problem then.
Yes, we probably could.
Anything else you wish to add at all?
No, I think we've about covered. If you want more information, you can go to votesmedley.com.
Okay.
Or you can see me on Facebook.
Okay.
I think we've covered about it. Unless you have any other thing that I didn't answer.
You kept answering my questions before I asked them, so, which is good.
That's good. All right, well, thank you for taking some of your time out today to interview with us.
Thank you.
And good luck in the primary coming up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.